Hey guys, Tuesday, April 7th, we're going to go over last week's America in World War I Crash Course Part 1. So let's get started. So here we go here with what three things did America turn the tide of World War I? They are superior technology, innovative tactics, and remarkable generalship. Now, one thing I want to point out, and will come up in a question in a few minutes, is the number one thing that helped America turn the tide were fresh troops. Troops in Europe had been fighting for years. Fresh American troops showed up, definitely turning the tide of the war. How long was America involved in World War I? Only about a year and a half. The war lasted for 4 years, but America was only there for the last year and a half. How many soldiers lost their lives? 10 million. So I said here at the 110 mark, John describes World War I as horrible and pointless. An objective of yours moving forward is to understand why he feels that way. So let's continue. When the war started, America remained neutral. Many Americans supported the British, but we didn't take a side. Green says it was because we were isolationist. What does that mean? You know this. This is a review. We wanted to stay out of the affairs and interests of other countries. What worried progressives about American involvement in World War I? You know what progress means. It's moving forward to something, to a situation that's improved or better. And what worried progressives was that our involvement in World War I would get in the way of the changes, the progressive changes here in the United States. For a 45-second clip, most American history students, says John, would incorrectly identify the sinking of the Lusitania as the reason why America joined World War I. What was the Lusitania? Why can some argue that Germany had a right to sink it? And why was it not an immediate cause of America's involvement in World War I? Basically, the Lusitania was a passenger ship. It was a British passenger ship. It was carrying mostly British people, but over 100 Americans as well. It was sunk by a German U-boat. Now, some would argue that the U-boat had a right to sink the Lusitania because it was carrying military supplies. According to my research, it was not a lot, so that continues to be controversial whether or not the German U-boat had a right to sink the Lusitania. Did the weapons on the Lusitania make it more of a warship than a passenger ship? I'll leave that up to you. And the reason why it wasn't an immediate cause of the war is because we didn't immediately get involved in the war. We didn't involve ourselves in the war until close to 2 years after the sinking of the Lusitania. So for what reasons did America declare war? I gave you hints: submarine, Zimmerman, Tsar, and love and money. First, submarine. After the Lusitania was sunk, Germany agreed not to sink non-military or non-naval ships. They broke that promise and started unrestricted submarine warfare again, meaning they could sink anything and everything. The Zimmerman telegram. Germany reached out to Mexico to say, hey, Mexico, join us against the United States, and if we're victorious, you can get some of your land back from the United States. Britain intercepted the telegram, told us about it. That was another thing that pushed us into the war. So we had 1, unrestricted submarine warfare starts again. 2, the Zimmerman telegram. 3, the Tsars. The Tsar was a leader of Russia. The Tsar was kind of like a dictator. When the Tsar was kicked out of power, Russia became more democratic. And because Russia became more democratic, the United States, being a democracy, felt more comfortable allying themselves with Russia. So 1, unrestricted submarine warfare. 2, the Zimmerman telegram. 3, Russia becomes more democratic. And the 4th one is love and money. Frankly, a lot of Americans felt a tight connection with Britain because of our shared history. Also, they owed us a bunch of cash. What was America's primary contribution to the Entente powers? These were the alliance between Russia, France, and Britain. It was economic. It was mostly valuable things we gave them, whether it was military hardware or flat-out money. What were the 1 million or so American soldiers known as? Doughboys. They were most likely to die from the flu, not from bullets. I thought this was worth mentioning, considering where we're at in history right now. The sheer numbers, the number of American soldiers, were enough to force the defeat of the exhausted Germans. I spoke about this a couple of minutes ago. Fresh American troops showed up and went to war with very weary soldiers that had been fighting for years before American doughboys showed up. World War I made the national government much more powerful than it had ever been. Identify 4 examples of how the national government gained power. What did the government do? 1, a draft was created, the Selective Service Act. I think over 20 million men registered for the draft, about 10 million served. So that was a big power grab by the United States government. The United States government also took control of the economy. Things like industry, transportation, agriculture, labor. The United States government had their hands in a lot of that. The United States government raised taxes tremendously. The crash course says the wealthiest Americans could expect to pay 60% of their income in taxes. And then also the government used its power to shape public opinion with the use of propaganda. That's where part 2 starts, and that's where we'll pick it up tomorrow. All right, guys, have a good day.